Hi, I'm John Bachman. Welcome back to Newsmax TV's special coverage of the GOP debate before the candidates even took the stage tonight. Reince Priebus, chairman of the Republican National Committee, had a few words to say.
This party is going to support the nominee, whoever that is, 100%. There's no question about that.
Well, that may be seen as a message of some members of the party who have said they would not support Donald Trump no matter what, even if he is the GOP nominee. Of course, he needs to get 1,237 delegates to ensure that. Meanwhile, former chairman of the RNC, Michael Steele, had this to say about tonight's debate. Quote, "This GOP debate has been the return of Marco Rubio that scared the crap out of his opponents and inspired his supporters." We'll see that debate, of course, in Miami, one of America's first cities that could feel the impact of climate change, if any. Senator Marco Rubio, a Miami native, was asked about that tonight. Here's what he had to say.
So on the issue of flooding in Miami, it's caused by two things. Number one, South Florida is largely built on land that was once a swamp. And number two, because if there is higher sea levels or whatever it may be happening, we do need to deal with that through mitigation. And I have long supported mitigation efforts. But as far as a law that we can pass in Washington to change the weather, there's no such thing.
Rubio says the laws that President Obama wants to pass would do more harm than good, hurting the American people and the U.S. economy. Florida Governor Rick Scott also spoke with reporters outside the debate tonight and tried to clarify his position on Donald Trump's most recent comments about Islam, hatred, and the U.S.
There's people that love this country. There's people that don't love this country. What we all do know, it's not a surprise, that radical Muslims don't like our country. But in our state, we have people from all walks of life living here. We have 105 million tourists this last year. We get along. We're at a 44.5-year low in our crime rate.
So you don't agree with what Donald Trump said?
I agree with what I said. You can ask Donald what he said.
There you go. Earlier, Scott, who was not endorsing a candidate during the primary, was asked about Trump saying, quote, "I think Islam hates us." He was kicked off MSNBC's Morning Joe for not answering that question. We want to hear from you about the debate tonight. You can go to newsmaxpolls.com and cast your vote. Who do you think did the best? We'll be back with more. But now let's send it over to JD.
John Bachman, thank you very much, and let us continue the discussion. I just have to say, if I can pull back the curtain a little bit, having been on both sides of this thing, when a question is asked, someone can answer the question. It may not be exactly what the moderator wants to hear, but when the question is asked, people have the right to answer it as they choose, at least from my perspective. Here to answer questions and offer analysis right now, again from Newsmax, New York, it's our friend who you see weeknights at 7 o'clock Eastern, Steve Malzberg, host of the Steve Malzberg Show, and from way out west in America's most livable city, San Diego, a guy who knows a lot about the economy, Kyle Harrington, who is the founder and managing partner of Harrington Capital Management. So, Kyle, as you sit there on the left coast, who got the economy right tonight in the debate?
Oh, listen, I think that, when it comes to the economy, which is where I'm watching from first and foremost, I think you have to say Donald Trump really, he understands profitability, economics, revenues. He understands building companies. He understands building companies or building casinos that fail. A lot of, I think, education comes from, failing a few times. And with those sort of experiences, he speaks, I think, at a different level as it pertains to the economy.
And Steve Malzberg, it didn't come up in quite this way tonight. But whenever Donald was criticized about this, he'd say, hey, I've actually hired people, unlike you politicians on the stage. And that, of course, is a paraphrase, not exactly the same quote that Donald used. But his persona of being an outsider to Washington, even though he says he's part of that establishment in the past, he's seen the error of his ways, he knows how to fix it. His business and economic credibility, Steve, how much of that is lending to Donald Trump's front-runner status?
By the way, bravo to what you said about, moderator might not like what the answer is, but you don't throw someone off the show. I treated David Duke better than Mika Brzezinski treated the governor of Florida. She should be ashamed of herself. But having said that, look, when people watch these debates and they listen to Donald Trump or they see Donald Trump, they see a guy who has succeeded. They see a guy who has hired people and fired people and knows the laws and knows how to take advantage of them and knows the downfalls with China and trade, etc., who's lived it, not has just talked about it. And that's the difference. They see hope in this guy. Like I said before, they don't want a policy wonk. They don't want somebody who could stand, they don't want an economist who could stand there and tell you exactly what needs to be done. And they want someone who's lived it and has made his career that and can then translate that into helping their life situation. That is one of the major appeals of Donald Trump.
So, Kyle, no offense to economists, but after all, economics is called the dismal science. Even that notwithstanding, Trump, when you sit down and talk to him about the big picture, about 19 trillion, about teetering on the brink of insolvency, he does carry a certain credibility that the other candidates cannot match. Is that the way you see it?
I could not agree more with you, JD, and Steve said it very well. This is a guy that sees the U.S. currently as a balance sheet, as a financial statement, and can surround himself with the appropriate, talented, experienced people to dissect this U.S. economy as it currently stands, and I think give us the best chance, and our children the best chance, to resurrect the U.S. economy, decrease debt levels, and put us in a position where we need to be, which is as the most competitive economy in the world. He is correct when he points out trade deals with China or trade deals with Mexico. If there's someone that has negotiated many and many deals, it is Donald Trump. So if you are looking at it from an economic perspective, I'm not talking about any of the social issues right now that Donald Trump may stand for. I'm talking about as a businessman. You really have to see him as a standout as compared to all of the other so-called, you mentioned, policy wonks or people that have been in politics their entire career.
So, Kyle, only about a minute and 15 seconds remain. If Donald Trump or one of the other candidates called you for advice on the economy and you had to prioritize what it is that needs to be done, what would be your number one priority you would advise them of addressing first?
Debt levels. I think we really need to examine the depth of our federal deficit and protect and get that down and protect and preserve our children and the future of our country with respect to issues like Social Security. I think that is a tantamount piece of what needs to be addressed very quickly.
Final 30 seconds go to my colleague, Steve Malzberg. Steve, the last word on what we saw tonight and what you think is ahead.
I think it was very dignified. It was the most dignified of all. I think Donald hit it on the head when he said, I can't believe how cordial everybody's being up here, how civil everybody's being up here. Again, I think that Donald Trump did absolutely nothing to hurt himself. He probably enhanced himself. Rubio grew up and was, as always, strong on policy issues. Cruz was his usual brilliant self. Kasich was strong in his own right. I don't believe anything changed whatsoever. Status quo. Trump wins Florida, and it's going to be close in Ohio, and then we go from there.
Fair enough. Kyle Harrington, you mentioned the national debt. Sir, we are in your debt for your analysis of the economy. Steve Malzberg will be looking for you tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern. And to you watching, we're still looking for your vote on who you think won the debate tonight. You can record your vote at newsmaxpolls.com. That'll do it for our special coverage. Thanks very much for watching.